Hi everyone, welcome to Ask the Egg Whisper. Super excited to be on here, and I can't wait for you guys to start sparkling on my screen. And I'm going to say that again because I'm so excited to share my sparkle checklist with you. If you guys joined me yesterday, you probably heard me talking about the sparkle checklist, and I didn't quite get it down as smoothly as I would like. So you're probably wondering, what the heck is she talking about? She's full of methods, right? Full of, okay. We got the Tushy method, we got the balls method, and now we got the sparkle method. So this is your IVF checklist that you don't leave the clinic without with every visit. So what does it stand for? The size of your follicles, follicles, the plan, protocol, and what does your pyramid look like? Are you happy? That's the A. Are you happy? And that's a question you'll ask your doctor. Are you happy? You guys, I can barely spell. I think the word sparkle is just too many syllables for me, or maybe it's too difficult. The R is, when is the retrieval going to be? Because you got to plan your life. You want to know, like, do you have enough medications? When you guys need to, like, when the guy needs to do his stuff, because you guys all know that we don't want little sperm cells walking around with little canes, if you know what I mean. We don't like the saved up sperm. So we want to know, when is the retrieval? This is embarrassing. I feel like I need a sparkle sign, but this is giving you guys time to join me because you're like, I think I'm embarrassed for her, but don't worry. I can embarrass myself and be proud of it. So then we want to know, should we keep going? And maybe that's a question I should ask right now. Should we keep going? That's the K. And the L is lining, and the E is estrogen. So let me just break it down. The sparkle checklist: size, protocol, pyramid. I'm going to stop. Okay. Well, thanks guys for joining me today on Ask the Egg Whisperer. Let's get started. Here we go. I have Melissa asking me a question, and what she's saying is this: I have suspected endometriosis and adenomyosis. To what degree? I'm not sure. I've never had any type of procedure to explore and officially diagnose. I have severe, heavy, painful periods with larger than normal clotting. I had a previous ruptured ectopic resulting in the removal of one tube, and my doctor saw a very small endometrioma on one ovary. We just finished my egg retrieval. What should I ask my doctor to prepare for my frozen transfer? Do I need more testing beforehand or a special protocol? I'm concerned with the side effects of Lupron. Can someone still have a successful transfer without treatment of endometriosis or adenomyosis? Thank you so much. Okay, Melissa, diagnosis before treatment. So it sounds like you know that you have a history of tubal factor, and it sounds like you probably have endometriosis because you just told me, and it sounds like you might have some adenomyosis because of the size and large. I just put those two words together and out came Sarge. That might be a new term that we use. Are your clots Sarge? Anyways. So based on the size of the blood clots and your symptoms, it sounds like adenomyosis is an issue too. So this is the thing. Why not treat it, right? And don't be scared of Lupron, because there are other options. I'm not saying tough it out because Lupron sucks. I have a Lupron survival guide. Go to my YouTube channel, Egg Whisperer Show, and you'll see the 10 things you need to know to survive Lupron. A really dear patient of mine gave me the guide, and I told her I would turn it into a show, and I think it's hilarious, but I am not the comedic writer of that show. I have to give her credit. So I do recommend anyone who's considering Lupron to watch that. And I actually tell my patients, you got to Google Lupron and see all the stuff that's out there so that you don't feel like there's a complication. Like, you know, the things that my patients tell me that bother them the most, the one thing actually is insomnia. So patients have pretty bad insomnia from it. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff too. And so that's something that you should know up front. So I take the use of Lupron very, 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 very seriously. So I would say there are other options. There's Orlissa, and there's also Femera, and there's also another laparoscopy surgery to help repair, not repair, but to remove the endometrioma that you might have on that one ovary and clean up endometriosis that's everywhere else. And also look at that one remaining tube, fallopian tube, that you have to make sure that that tube isn't full of endometriosis and that you don't have a hydrosalpinx or something like that. And with your heavy periods, I would also recommend a hysteroscopy to take a look at your cavity. And if you're a patient of mine, we would talk through the ERA test, receptiva test, sometimes even a pelvic MRI could help us to kind of figure out, how much treatment we need to have. And if you don't have access to the test that I just mentioned, maybe even doing 2 or 3 months of Femera only. So 2 tabs of letrozole every single day, maybe for 2 months with Agestin sometimes works really well to prevent the side effects of Femera, even also helps with the side effects of Lupron. Those are the kinds of things that we would talk about. We would also talk about an anti-inflammatory diet and supplements that can also reduce inflammation and hopefully prevent the progression of endometriosis, like N-acetylcysteine or NAC. Okay, guys, next question is from Felicia. Let's see if I can get through this without making up new words. I can't even remember the word I just made up. So this Felicia is saying, hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 37, my husband is 36, and we've gone through 2 IVF cycles that failed. Let's just talk about it as IVF that didn't work. But honestly, it feels like a freaking failure. I totally agree. I hate it when that happens a lot. I have a 15-year-old and he does not have kids. No sperm issues. I have 1 blocked fallopian tube. The first cycle was an antagonist with Cetrotide and HCG. We got 12 eggs, 4 mature, 3 fertilized, none grew past day 3. Second cycle, Lupron microdose flare, 8 eggs, 3 mature, all arrested at day 3. My AMH is 8, AFC 20 on the left and 7 on the right. My RE said they're not sure why I'm not having good eggs, as my numbers are really good, and that they think I should stop wasting money on IVF. And try naturally, and then I have good eggs somewhere. They just don't know what cycle. I've been taking NAD, NAC, Ovavite with CoQ10, Terostilbene before my second IVF cycle. What additional advice can you give me? Okay, Felicia, this is the thing. You've got lots of eggs, but you're not getting as high of an egg recovery as you would expect. Here are the things that I would do. Here we go. Grow your eggs to 20 to 22 millimeters, number 1. Number 2, look at your trigger shot dosing. You have a really high egg count, so potentially your doctors are underdosing because they want to keep you safe, which makes total sense. But now that you've gone through 2 cycles that didn't work, maybe consider a higher dose HCG trigger with a higher dose HCG, depending on what they gave you before, and add Lupron as well. And this will keep you safe, but also might help mature your eggs. Also consider HGH. Maybe try priming ahead of this next cycle. It might give you more mature eggs, and HGH during your cycle. All of these things are potential strategies that can help with getting more eggs, more mature eggs, and better quality embryos, because it seems like that's our issue. You already have a 15-year-old. The likelihood of you having a chromosomal issue is probably pretty low. Did you hear that? I just went into my falsetto voice. Probably pretty low. I'm actually an alto, if you couldn't tell, for those of you who are singers out there. As far as your husband, he hasn't fathered a child before, so it would make sense potentially to do a chromosome analysis on him, because what if this is related to something in your DNA? I mean, I always tell people the answer is always in your DNA, but we can't do those kinds of tests. But what if it's a chromosome issue, and you probably want to know now before your 3rd cycle, because it might make you think through like things differently or make you like take a different path. So those are the kinds of things that I would think about in your case, Felicia, and thank you for your question. I know this is a problem a lot of people have, patients of mine have as well, and I feel for you. And I would say that if you have another cycle in you, I would try again. Okay, so this next question is from Sarah. Sarah says, wondering what you'd suggest we do next. 2 failed medicated cycles, 2 failed IUIs, 2 previous first trimester miscarriages before treatment. I'm 28, my husband's 31. We want 3 or 4 children. My AMH is 1.75 and a sperm count was 14 million post-wash, with motility being 98%. Should we consider IVF or try another IUI? Sarah, I would consider IVF. I love everybody. You guys know that about me. Do I look like someone who doesn't love everybody? Maybe my mother once in a while. She doesn't even watch this. Sometimes I'm just like, I might not love you right now. But I tell her that very transparently. Anyways, I digress. Let's talk about Sarah. So Sarah, when looking at your situation, I love the fact that you want 3 or 4 kids. Starting at 28, if you think about it this way, baby at 28, baby at 30, baby at 32, baby at 34. Given all that you've been through and given your AMH and your husband's sperm, I would love if you would secure embryos right now. Like right now. Like call your fertility doctor and be like, let's do IVF right now. Let's prepare me for IVF. But before you do that, remember, you guys, I can hear you all saying, Amy's going to say it, diagnosis before treatment, the egg whisperer way. So you got to go through the egg whisperer diet. What's the diagnosis? Why are you guys not getting pregnant? Why did you have the 2 miscarriages? I feel like the answer will help guide you and teach you exactly how to prepare for your IVF cycle and the IVF options that are presented to you. Then you can pick the right options for you. So for example, you've had 2 miscarriages. Have you done things like an autoimmune workup? Do you have antiphospholipid antibody syndrome? Imagine you transfer an embryo and then you miscarry again, and you'll be like, wait, this just happened again. I thought IVF was supposed to fix it. And IVF can't fix everything. And so if you have a miscarriage or a pregnancy miscarries after an embryo transfer and you had antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, you might have wished that someone had diagnosed that first so that you could take something like Lovenox, which is a blood thinner. So go to actually I just posted it today, myangelmethod.com, and go through all those things with your doctor and say, have you ruled this out? Have you ruled out a thrombophilia? Have you ruled out an autoimmune issue? Have you ruled out a thyroid disorder? Have you ruled out a uterine septum? See, easy. What have you ruled out for me lately? Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so thank you, Sarah, for that question. You can see that I'm kind of bossy, a little bossy. But at the end of the day, your doctor knows your story better than I do, sitting here on Instagram. So talk to your doctor about all the factors that I just shared with you and see what your doctor thinks is best for you guys. And make sure that your priorities are your doctor's, not the other way around. Certainly if you felt like, IVF, I don't want to do that, no problem. There's no rush. You can still try with the things that you're considering like IUI, and then maybe before your second pregnancy, do IVF then. Okay, this next question is from Saher. Saher is saying, hi, Dr. Aimee, I'm 39, 40 in January, and I've been doing IVF for 2 years. My first round yielded 4 blasts and all were normal. What the heck? Holy smokes. That's a really great cycle. We did an ERA before the first transfer, and I was receptive at 122 hours. I went on to have 2 transfers, and they didn't work. 1 embryo did not survive the thaw, and 1 is frozen. I'm not sure what that means there, but we'll keep going. The doctor said there would be no change to my protocol, so we went for a second opinion. I did a laparoscopy and HSG, all were normal. I then did another egg retrieval with only Menopur, got 8 eggs, 3 blasts, did a fresh transfer with 2, got my period 8 days after the transfer. For the frozen transfer, we added Neupogen wash, interlipids, Lovenox, and it worked. But sadly, the pregnancy had a very rare genetic condition, and the pregnancy ended. So I'm now starting over at almost 40, and my RE suggested embryo banking. See, I'm making up another word, banking. Embryo banking before transferring. I was trying to say banking and transferring, and all of a sudden I came up with a new word, banking. What are reasons for multiple PGS transfers failing? Any suggestions moving forward to help with success? Okay, Sahar, let's just go back to what I talked about with Sarah's question. So I brought up the egg whisperer diet, right? So what's the diagnosis? Prepare and move forward with your IVF cycle. And that third thing, right? The E in your situation could be pretty important and helpful. You did the ERA test, and it sounds like you did a laparoscopy and HSG, but there might be something going on in the lining of the uterus that you can't see with your eyes. So there are a lot of different protocols that I would consider using in a case like yours. So one thing that sometimes works well, even when you don't have a piece of paper that says someone has silent endometriosis, like with the Receptiva DX test, and I know you did a laparoscopy that showed no endometriosis, but you might want to consider treating as if it's there. There's some things that can happen with receptors in the lining of the uterus, and maybe the uterine lining would be more receptive. If you take medications like Femara or Letrozole, for example, with Lupron, there have been some really nice studies that show that. And if you're curious about the studies, feel free to reach out to me, and I can share them with you, and you can share them with your doctor, and then you guys can see if this makes sense for you. The other thing that I would consider, given how hard you've worked and how many embryos you've had and gone through, and with obviously the devastating situation that you just experienced with the pregnancy that ended over 20 weeks, I would have you consider doing more cycles, and depending on how many embryos you have, maybe consider a gestational carrier. I know it's hard to hear, like everyone wants to carry, not everyone, I just say most people, if given an option, would want to carry a pregnancy themselves, especially when you've gone through the loss that you've gone through. So I certainly don't want to take that away from you. But I think it's nice to just say it out loud. You've gone through a lot. You've transferred so many embryos and had so many bad experiences so far that I want to take them as learning experiences and use those lessons and apply them to what you might want to consider moving forward. So I do agree with your doctor about embryo banking and doing more, and then see, based on the quality of the embryos, what your pregnancy rate would be, and then decide whether it would make sense to transfer to you or transfer to a surrogate, given all you've been through. So just throwing that out there as a suggestion, not saying that you need it. And, the other reason why PGS embryos don't work, it could be that they were mosaic, meaning that the test actually didn't reveal a small abnormality, for example. So it could be they were mosaic. It could be that the embryo had an abnormality that wasn't picked up on in the test because it was too small for the test to pick it up. So those are some of the reasons why. And also at the end of the day, there are these cellular interactions that have to happen between the surface of the embryo and the surface of the uterus. And they have to just the embryo just has to snuggle up into that uterine lining. And if those interactions aren't just perfect, and it has to do with genes and receptors and enzymes and things that are completely out of our control, which makes my job just a little bit, and I'm lying, very, very frustrating most of the day. But I get through it by knowing that I get to be on here with you guys and talk to you about fertility. So it's super fun. So thank you, Sahir, for asking that question. This next question is from Crystal. Crystal says, my doctor ordered a 30-day antifungal, antibacterial medicine protocol to try to eliminate any hidden reasons why my transfers are failing. Interesting. And I've had 4 miscarriages before IVF. Heartbreaking. He said, either take it for 30 days or take as much as I can till my next transfer, which is in a week. I always thought if you stopped a medication too soon, it could have negative effects. Is it better to just take it for a week? Okay, Crystal, I don't know what kind of antifungal, antibacterial protocol your doctor has for the last 30 days, has you on. Get the official reports. Ask them, what's my diagnosis and what's my prognosis and what the heck are you treating? So that you feel like you're in control. So you're not feeling like something's being done to you and you don't know what's going on. There are conditions like endometritis that needs treatment. Typically, we recommend about 2 weeks of treatment, not necessarily 30 days. So I'm not sure what type of antibacterial or antifungal regimen you're on. I'm not going to say that I'm questioning your doctor even a little bit. Maybe a little bit. I'm not. Maybe a little bit. I'm really not. But what I'm saying is, I think it would be helpful for you to learn more. And one way to talk to your doctor is, can you share any resources or references with me or articles that I may read so that I can educate myself about what I'm taking and why I'm taking it before my transfer? How is this supposed to help me? And then you know that question, what have you ruled out for me lately? What have you done to show that I actually need this? And what else have you done to help me with a diagnosis so you can help me be successful with my goals? Okay, thank you, Crystal, for that question, and I hope your transfer is a success. Okay, here we have a question from Chrissy. Chrissy says, hi, Dr. Aimee, I love your show, and you're absolutely amazing. Thank you. I'm 37 years old with DOR, also diagnosed with elevated thyroid antibodies. My last test value was 27. That's pretty good. AMH 0.63, FSH 9.5, AFC 8. My husband has low morphology at 2%. We've done 2 IVF cycles, no blasts. I'm sorry. First cycle, we did an antagonist protocol starting with birth control pills. We got 7 eggs, 3 fertilized, no blasts. Switched clinics, then did estrogen priming, Menopur 300, Gonal F300 with Clomid and Dex, triggered with HCG 10,000. Lupron, also calcium activation was used. We got 3 eggs, 2 fertilized, no blasts. My doctor is recommending a Lupron flare protocol for my next cycle. My husband and I are on tons of supplements. I'm on CoQ10, Cyaberry, vitamin D, vitamin C, maca, fish oil, DHEA. Husband's on Fertilade, CoQ10, vitamin C, vitamin E. Would you recommend the Lupron flare protocol? And also, what other supplements should we be taking? Okay, so Chrissy, first of all, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. It sounds like we know what the diagnosis is. The diagnosis is we are having an embryo quality issue, okay? And every embryo is a sperm and an egg. Egg quality is determined by 3 letters, and those letters are in the word age, and literally stands for age, genetics, and environment. For you, age, genetics, environment. For your husband. So let's look at both things for both of you. So your age, not in our control. Genetics, let's make sure you've done enough genetic screening. Both of you. Chromosome analysis for both of you. You know what I'm going to say for him? Sperm DNA fragmentation test for him. Go through the balls method. Make sure you've done all that stuff. Rule out a varicocele. Take a look at what's going on, because it might possibly be that what's happening with the embryo arrest is related to his sperm DNA fragmentation. Super important. Environment. Look at the stuff that you're drinking. Are you drinking soda out of a can? I know there's other things in the environment too, but I just felt like saying that because I wanted to take a moment to have a little sip of my Coffee. I love my coffee. Okay. And then the other things that I would consider adding is NAD for both of you. And then for you, I'm not too excited about DHEA. I don't know how long you've been on it for, but maybe consider stopping it for a little bit and testing your testosterone level. And then ask your doctor about HGH, priming and in your cycle. And the other thing that I would also do is have you consider a mini IVF cycle, and not necessarily a standard stem the way you've been doing it, like a natural cycle start. And the other thing to do, since you're 37, some clinics have really good experiences with something called a mid-luteal stimulation or duo stim, and see if your doctor and what your doctor thinks about that. So thank you, Chrissy. You're a warrior. Keep sparkling and keep doing all the things that you're doing and asking all the questions that you're asking. They're great. Okay, Annalise has a question. Her question is this: what are your thoughts on acupuncture after transfer? That's a good question. I'm getting acupuncture twice a week, 4 weeks leading up to the transfer. Should I do it the day after? Should I do it a couple days after? Okay, Annalise, here's what I would tell you. Your acupuncturist does their little thingy, majiggy. They like wiggle your ear. They blow air up your nose. I'm kidding. They don't do that. They might massage your elbow. They do that. And then they'll be like, this is your chi, and this is what I recommend for you. I tell them, don't get into my IVF business. Don't you be telling me what to do. And I say the same thing about the acupuncturists. I say to them, work your magic. Like, they have their thing. They know it works. And they all have a protocol. For my patients, there are some acupuncturists that are on site at the IVF lab. There are other acupuncturists that are off site. So obviously the off site people have their protocol because they can't come on site. And the on site people have their protocol because they're on site. So in general, I would say probably 90% of my patients do a session 30 minutes before the transfer and a session 30 minutes after the transfer. And they're seeing their acupuncturist, just like you're seeing them once or twice a week before the transfer. And I never fertility shame anyone. And what I really meant to say, because my stomach was growling, and I don't know if you guys heard that, I never acupuncture shame anybody. So I never think that a transfer didn't work because someone didn't do acupuncture. Like, that's really not like the reality. But the reality is that my patients who do it, they feel better. They are less tired. They have less aches and pains from treatment. And when I say aches and pains, anyone who's done the shot in the butt knows exactly what I'm talking about. Less nausea, for example, in early pregnancy. So, you know, it can help you with the physical experience and emotional experience because you have someone else that you get to talk to about like what you're going through, and being connected with other human beings is always a good thing. That's what makes us human. So I'm going to move on to the next question. Anna also is complimenting and says, hi, Dr. Aimee, I love your show. I'm 41 years old. I had 2 egg retrievals done this year. In a result, I got only 1 embryo and was sent for PGS, and it was abnormal. These were the chromosomes that were missing, 6, 13, and then I had an additional 16. My doctor never explained that to me. Here's my question. Do I have a chance to get a normal embryo? Is it worth trying in my age? Please help me to understand my situation. Anna, anyone who's over the age of 40, I will always say, look, it might take several cycles for us to even get 1 embryo that has normal chromosomes. At the age of 41, if you have an embryo, the chance of it being normal is around 18 to 20%, okay? And the thing is that, like, when we think about IVF less than 40, it's like the numbers of eggs really matters, but when you're over 40, it's really the quality of the egg, not so much like the quantity. However, having more eggs is helpful, but just because you have more eggs, unfortunately doesn't mean that they're going to be normal. So I've had cases where I have a 43-year-old with an FSH of like 13, I get 1 follicle, I get 1 egg out, and it's normal, right? And I'm just like, hot dog. Actually probably say hot damn. I'm really glad that I believe in that person's fertility, and I believe in everybody's fertility. But in a case like yours, I would always say, look, we have to be prepared for the possibility that's going to happen again. You're going to do another cycle and you can have another embryo that doesn't have normal chromosomes. Would you have wished, I'm doing a lot of word replacements tonight. Would you have wished that you had moved on to egg donation, to something that would have given you a much higher chance of pregnancy? Or would you still have felt like you needed to do another cycle so you can see what would happen and then move on? So I have patients that are like, no, I mean, I'm in it, like, I'm just going to do like 4 to 6 cycles. I'm 41, I totally get it. And then after that, then I'm going to like think about other options. So the reason why it makes sense to keep going is if you have mature eggs, they're fertilized, they grow to the blastocyst stage and they're beautiful, then I would say like it makes sense to keep going. However, if you're not even getting mature eggs anymore, happens to all of us, you guys, and they're not fertilizing, they're not growing, and they're growing, or maybe the quality is extremely poor, then at that point, you might say, yeah, I think I can have closure now and never look back and say I didn't try my very best. So these are, like I said, the conversations that I have with people all the time. So by hearing me say these things, ask yourself the same questions that I just brought up and see how you feel, and then say, should I move on or should I keep trying? And I've had cases like yours when I'm like, why not just try IUI? I know that sounds nuts. Like, just take it a step back, start looking for an egg donor, and who knows what would happen? Because when two people love each other, for example, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, miracles can happen. So this next question is from Amanda. And Amanda says, first off, I seriously love watching you. Thank you, Amanda. If you were right here, I would just say thank you. I'm 31 with an AMH of 0.6. I've done a 3-day transfer with 2 embryos. And that round made it to day 5. Then did a 5-day transfer with 1 embryo. It ended in a biochemical pregnancy. Then had 4 frozen embryos, and I added DHEA and ubiquinol to that transfer. I'm now preparing for another retrieval to bank more embryos, and I also added in vitamin D, omega-3, along with the others I was previously taking, and doing a FET on day 5 after this retrieval in December. What are your thoughts on that? Or should I just try another fresh? Thanks for your help. Amanda, I think what you're asking me is fresh better than frozen or frozen better than fresh. And in general, I should have like a little jingle, because I feel like I say this all the time and it would probably sound better as a jingle. And it's December, so jingles seem like timely right now. What I would say is fresh is just as good as frozen, and frozen is just as good as fresh, unless your doctor thinks that fresh is better or frozen is better for you. Whenever you sit down, and you do sit for a transfer, you have to say, in this moment, would doing this transfer help me reach my family size goals? So if the answer is you have 1 embryo to transfer and no embryos frozen, and given what you've been through, it might make sense for you to freeze more, then freeze embryos and do another cycle. But if the embryo is speaking to you and saying, but my quality isn't as good, so maybe I might be better going into your uterus. See, embryos do talk to me too. So if your embryo is talking to you and your gut or your ovaries or your uterus is saying, feed me, kind of like Austin Powers, then maybe do a fresh transfer. But the times where I'm like, nope, no frozen embryo for you, as if, let's say, I see a polyp, no fresh embryo for you, as if, let's say, I see a polyp growing. Or if you're super uncomfortable and just need time to recover after an egg retrieval. Or if we really want to do genetic testing, or if we feel like we've done so many transfers, it would make sense for us to do implantation testing, then I'm like, let's just commit to doing a frozen embryo transfer and then going from there. But in general, we've been doing fresh transfers for a really, really long time. And there have been so many studies that show that, the pregnancy rate might not be that different. There might be some benefits to frozen embryo transfers. Maybe the placentas are bigger. Maybe the babies are healthier. There might be, all in quotes, less pregnancy complications. But in your particular situation, it might be the same. And if your gut feeling is, I want to do a fresh embryo transfer, then I would say go for it. Okay, so this next question is from Emily. Hi, Emily. Emily is saying, hi, Dr. Aimee, thank you for your show. I'm 33, healthy BMI. I have unexplained secondary infertility, PCOS with recurrent pregnancy losses, 5 to be exact in the last 2 years. So Emily, we have to take out the diagnosis of unexplained. You just explained it to me. Let's keep going. I've had 5 miscarriages to be exact in the last 2 years. All losses have been after my first full-term spontaneous healthy pregnancy. We've done 3 IUIs, 2 resulted in the losses. The first one at 15 weeks, the second at 6. My last pregnancy was spontaneous. We confirmed it implanted, and there was a sac and fetal pull, but not viable at 6 weeks. For the last 2, I was on Lovenox, baby aspirin, and progesterone. Our carrier screens are normal, endocrine normal, last antiphospholipid normal, uterine structure normal. My doctor says he has nothing else to offer me but IVF with PGD testing to rule out genetic or immune issues. My AMH is 3.3. I have 1 ovary. Husband's sperm analysis is good. Is there anything else you would test for? How can I improve my chances with IVF? Emily, I'm really sorry for everything that you've been through. It's heartbreaking. And yet you're a warrior, right? You're resilient and strong. And to me, you're sparkling. And you're going to do anything and everything to reach your family size goals. And that's exactly what you're doing. To go through all you've gone through and still just be like, I'm ready. What can I do? It's just, I have so much respect for you, and I'm ridiculously proud of you for all that you're doing. And for those of you who are like, I would never do that, I still love you too. Don't worry. But for Emily, this is what we can do to improve our chances for pregnancy. Number one, let's get to the diagnosis. You've done a lot of really great testing. And I wish we could have analyzed those pregnancies that you had to know what the chromosomes were. And that's part of the Angel method. Is the G part is the genetics of each and every pregnancy that you've had, is to know what was wrong with it could be a really good guide for us as far as what to do next. Because imagine you do IVF with PGT and you have these embryos that are tested and normal, and then you still miscarry at, let's say, 15 weeks. I mean, that's horrible for anyone to go through, but especially for someone who's already gone through so much as you. And I have had patients who've been through everything that you've gone through, but I'll tell you some of the things that I would have you consider doing. Number one, sperm DNA fragmentation testing. Number two, chromosome analysis for both of you. And number three, ask your doctor if there's any sign of adenomyosis or endometriosis. When I hear that you only have one ovary, I'm wondering, where's that other one? What happened to it? Was there a cyst of endometriosis on it? Get the operative report from the surgery that you had when the ovary was removed. Look at the pathology report of the cyst that was removed and see what was up with it. Is whatever that was going on with it affecting our chances of getting pregnant? Because sometimes adenomyosis can cause some of the problems that you've had. So talk to your doctor about, have you ruled out adenomyosis, endometriosis, a balanced translocation in either one of us? Sounds like you probably don't have a uterine septum, but I think asking about that and maybe doing a hysteroscopy with a laparoscopy would make sense in a case like yours. So thank you, Emily, for your question. Allie has a question. She says, I've had 6 egg retrievals and gotten 19 blasts, but only 2 of the 19 have been euploid. Last cycle, I got 6 day 5 blasts. The chromosome testing came back and all 6 were abnormal. I was devastated. I'm 40. Visual quality is usually 3BB, but many are complex abnormal with 4 chromosomes messed up. My last 2 cycles, I used HGH during stim, which resulted in more blasts, but still abnormal. So Allie, I would tell you that what you've gone through is pretty normal. It is normal to have abnormal embryos and have all of them be abnormal when you're even over the age of 39. So you just have to ask yourself the question, like, does it make sense to keep going? And if the answer is, yeah, I mean, I want to keep going and try at least 1 or 2 more cycles to see what I could get, I would say go for it. But sit down and talk to your doctor about my Embryo Diamonds. EmbryoDiamonds.com is where you can find it for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. So remember what the D is, remember what the I is, and I think in your case, the M is going to be the most important. So the M of Embryo Diamonds, so the diamonds is a mnemonic for 8 things you need to know about your embryos, DIAMONDS. See, I can count today, you guys. I might not be able to speak clearly, but I can certainly count still, barely. So with knowing the embryo diamond data, I think it's important to make sure that your embryos are not actually mosaic and they're being called abnormal. So the way you would know that is you would do a post-test consult with the genetic counselor affiliated with the genetic testing company. You would do a post-test consult with your IVF doctor and ask them about all the things in embryo diamonds and then see what you could do differently next time. And it sounds like you're doing everything. I mean, you even did HGH. And I would say if you aren't taking NAD or pterostilbene and as healthy as you could possibly be, those could be some adjustments that you could potentially make. But that's kind of what I would consider if you were a patient of mine, is making sure we've looked at all the things that I've already talked about earlier on the show, but especially looking for mosaicism and seeing if it's possible that there's still a chance that some of your embryos could turn into a live birth. Okay, this next question is from Cheryl. Cheryl is saying, on stressful months, my follicles did not mature to full size, averaging 12 millimeters. I was given Clomid for 3 months by my fertility doctor, and while it did help my follicles to mature, I did 2 IUIs that were unsuccessful. I was then prescribed letrozole, and though it resulted in 2 to 3 eggs to be ovulated, none of them were good size. Again, what should I do next? Will IUI or even IVF work for me or against me because of my condition? To what considerable point should I be diagnosed as infertile? Okay, Cheryl, so the question is, why is someone telling you that your eggs aren't getting to the right size? I mean, if you're ovulating, they're clearly getting to the right size. So it sounds like you're responding to the medication. And you're responding really well because you were on letrozole and you ovulated 3 eggs. So I'm thinking there's something else to our story. We got the 5 fertility tests that you need to do to come to a diagnosis, and that's all the 5 things in the Tushy method. So make sure you're looking at the tubes, look at the uterus, rule out fibroids, polyps, look at the sperm, look at all your hormones, make sure your thyroid's normal, and look at your genetics. And then go back to your doctor and say, have we done these things? What have you ruled out for me? And the answer is yes. IVF can certainly help if there truly is an egg-related issue. Sometimes you have to grow 18 eggs to get 2 that are normal, like literally, and that's nuts because we can't do that in an IUI cycle. I wish that the 1 egg we ovulated in an IUI cycle, wouldn't it be great if that 1 egg was actually normal? Like you can rely on the fact that your body somehow knows to grow the 1 egg, but that's just not how things work. Our body just grows an egg and doesn't necessarily know that it's a normal egg. So thank you for that question, Cheryl. I feel like I talk to patients a lot about this as well. So this next question is from Vicky. Vicky's asking a question about DHEA. Dr. Aimee, how much DHEA should you take pre-IVF, for how long, and how does the dose vary based on age and AMH? And does micronized really make a difference? We're going for our next round of IVF in February, so I'm really trying to be good with my diet and supplements, but I'm getting really bad reflux since COVID and finding it difficult to have protein powders, a lot of my healthy fruits, and veggie diet without having bad reflux or needing meds which can block absorption. Do you have any advice for how I can still get my nutrients and higher protein without triggering it or being on lots of carbs? So Vicky, I would go to foodfuels.com. Just like it sounds, foodfuels.com. There's a coach, her name is Coach Nina. I would talk to her about your diet. I also love, and there's lots of recipes and all that kind of stuff that you can follow. I also love Judy from Mind Body Nutrition. She's in Seattle and she has like all these fun, fabulous cooking classes, and she's just such a great resource, and she's a nutritionist and you can talk to her one-on-one as well. I also love Sneha Kishore. She's a functional medicine doctor. She's an MD that practices lifestyle medicine. So go to Argo, ARGOW, health.com. She can totally work one-on-one with you and help you with all of these things. But for me, I'm like, why are you having this bad reflux? If you think it's bad now, let me tell you, when you are pregnant, you will be miserable. You will never be able to sleep. You're just going to be so upset that you didn't have it treated before pregnancy. So I'm going to be here to tell you, let's get it treated. Seriously, like see a GI specialist. Make sure you don't need an endoscopy. Maybe you have an ulcer. You need treatment as far as I'm concerned, especially before you get pregnant. So I would take it seriously as far as what's going on, and maybe consider not swallowing pills as your supplements, maybe using liquid forms of the supplements. And I'm not the biggest fan of DHEA. I do think in some patients, maybe if their follicle count is less than 5, if they're on the thinner side, it could help. But otherwise, I'm not a big prescriber or subscriber to the whole DHEA improving egg quality phenomenon that people talk about, because I don't actually see that it improves things much at all. So this next question is from Melissa. Melissa says, hi, Dr. Aimee, I have 2 beautiful embryos, a 4AA and a 4AB minus. I'm now trying to decide between a natural FET or medicated. I previously used Clomid and Letrozole in unsuccessful IUIs. After my period started, I had an elevated hormone panel which showed my progesterone rising again, even though I was bleeding. It created some delays. It happened using both medications. My doctor says sometimes it happens, but it was very unusual. However, normally without any ovulation stimulation meds, my periods are always right on time. I ovulate regularly, and I also usually have a lining of 10 millimeters. I was really hoping for a natural cycle without having to put more hormones into my body daily, but my doctor believes with my history, a medicated cycle would be a better option. I plan on talking to him in more detail, but on this, and really wanted your opinion. Thank you for all you do. Okay, Melissa, this is the thing. If things aren't quite exactly precise, it's really hard to do a natural cycle because you can have these variations. And earlier on the show, I read through a question from someone who said they did a transfer and their period started 8 days later. Like, if that happened to you, you'd be like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I just did this. And I quote unquote wasted an embryo. Like, we don't want to have that feeling. So when we do a transfer, we want to feel like we did everything possible to give us the best chance for pregnancy. So what I'm thinking you could do, if in your gut, or I should say in your uterus or in your ovaries, if you really, really feel like a natural cycle transfer is right for you, maybe run through a natural cycle transfer with your doctor, like as a mock cycle. You don't have to necessarily do a transfer. You can actually do a biopsy on the lining of the uterus and do the ERA test. You can skip the ERA test as well, but maybe do a practice run, say, okay, I'm going to come in, we're going to try and time things, we're going to pretend like we're going to do the transfer, and then we're going to see what's going to happen with my cycle and decide, was this the right protocol for me? Meaning measuring your progesterone levels before when you would have done the transfer, after when you would have done the transfer, so that you're not looking back like, why didn't we do that? Like, that was something easy that we could have done. So you're hearing it from me. Listen to your uterus. Consider doing a mock cycle first if you really, really want to try a natural cycle. And if your doctor thinks that you truly need a medicated cycle, I would say probably a medicated cycle would make sense. So now that you asked that question, I just remember I need to tell a patient something today. So before I forget, I have to write her name here with a box so that I can check it off later, so I don't wake up at 2 a.m. and be like, oh my God, I was supposed to call her with this. Okay, great. So this next question is from Tanya. Tanya is saying, I just had a question. Thanks, Tanya. I'm 36 years old. I've been trying to get pregnant for the last 5 years. I just recently had a second round of blood work done and was wondering if 6.8 is a good AMH number. I've been told I possibly have PCOS, but it hasn't been diagnosed, not diagnosis. I got distracted because my husband is watching and he's sending me heart emojis, and I know that he's sending me lots of hearts out there. So hi, honey. Thanks for watching. You would think that he would get sick of me, you guys, sick of hearing me talking about fertility. And I think he actually just puts me on his phone so that like it can look like he's watching, but he probably isn't listening to anything I'm saying because he's just used to hearing me talk about this stuff all day long. Anyways, so back to Tanya's question. So Tanya, go to my website, draimee.org, and you're like, Draimee, who's that? Dr. Aimee, DRAIME.org/PCOS. So go ahead and put PCOS into my blog. And I want you to watch all the shows. I have a show with Sasha Hackman. I got a show with Dr. Dylan Cutler. I have a show with someone else. I don't even remember her name in this very moment. Felicia. She's awesome. So Felicia Gersh. See, you guys, I'm good. I haven't completely lost my memory. So read about all the PCOS stuff, all the tips and tricks that I have. And what you'll realize is that I call PCOS, egg roll please, hope syndrome. Hope. It's not a bad thing. It's a blessing to know that you might have it so that you know what you can do to like be healthy for the rest of your life. So I never think it's a bad thing to have a lot of eggs. Someone, Dr. Victory was on not that long ago, and he said something that was like, that's actually really funny, but actually resonates. Like, you can never have too much money, just like you can never have too many eggs. Like, it's a good thing. So I would hope, you see that? How I just threw that in there when talking about PCOS? So that's something for you to think about. Next question, not thing, is from Rita. Does an IVF protocol affect your menstrual cycle? I had a canceled IVF using the Flare method, Zoladex with a GnRH antagonist used. I went on to have my first period 12 days post-egg retrieval in October. My second period is now 5 days late, and I don't know if it's a Zoladex at work. P.S. I just took a stat dose of 3.8 milligrams at the beginning of my IVF cycle in September 21st. So the answer is yes. So I think Zoladex is similar to Lupron. So it's a medication that can put you into menopause. I think, if I'm right. I could Google it really quick, but I don't have time right now. But I think from my memory, I think I'm right. We don't have that medication here. I think that's the name for it overseas. The answer is yes. I think the cycle variation that you're seeing is probably just hormonally driven and nothing more. Next question is from Lene. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm a 39-year-old young woman. Love it. You certainly are young to me. In June, when I was 38, I had an egg retrieval. 6 out of 5 fertilized. 6 out of 5 fertilized. I think what you meant, 5 out of 6 fertilized. And I got 3 blastocysts by day 5. They don't do embryo screening in Norway, so I don't know their grading. And I just had an embryo transfer Tuesday, November 10th. I have tested since day 5 post-transfer, all stark white. Is this transfer a fail? What are the chances we will have one child from this round? I've been pregnant once, had an ectopic found at 10 weeks. 1 tube had to go. Thank you for taking the time to help. Hugs from Norway. Okay. Lene, I'm sorry that you've gone through so much. It's so frustrating to be a patient in other countries. Hearing the stories that people go through, from my standpoint, I'm just like, it's so frustrating because you don't get access to the information the way you get access to information here in this country. Like, it's unheard of not to talk to patients and give them their information. Remember, embryo diamonds, the O is official reports. And I have patients that come from different countries, and literally, like, it's not part of the law that patients own their own data. So it's certainly something that I'm so grateful for in this country, that things are not like that. Like, we have to have, well, I mean, I'd like to think that patients get honesty and transparency and get all their records. And I know that's not like that in other countries. So my recommendation to you is, with the fact that you had 3 blasts, and being that you're in Norway, I imagine they weren't able to transfer all 3 for you, so you probably have embryos frozen. It sounds like this transfer didn't work, but maybe before you do another transfer, maybe bank more embryos first, since you're nice and young at 39, so you have more embryos in 2 years from now. So hopefully this next transfer is going to be successful. But if you were a patient of mine, that's kind of what we would talk through. We would say, do we have enough embryos for the family size that we want? Should we do more retrievals now versus doing a frozen embryo transfer? And what E should we do, right? The E is endometrial testing should we do before we T, which is transfer. So what I'm spelling out is the Egg Whisperer diet. So we know your diagnosis is most likely your age and the fact the tube is removed. You've done IVF, and it sounds like your outcome is pretty darn good. 5 fertilized and 3 blasts at day 5 is really excellent. This transfer didn't work, but it doesn't mean that the next transfer won't. Most transfers don't work because of interactions between the embryo and uterus, and that's related to timing, it's related to genetics, it's related to possible inflammation. So ask your doctor if they've ruled out a hydrosalpinx in that one remaining tube that you have, because I think that would be really important, something that I would do and most doctors would do as well, to make sure that that tube isn't somehow getting in the way. Because remember, diagnosis before treatment. So we know age and tube is part of your diagnosis. So make sure that tube is teaching you everything you need to know before your next transfer. This next question is from Ping. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I just completed 1 full cycle. I start off with 15 total follicles at baseline, and only 4 to 5 follicles responded to stem. At retrieval, we were able to get 4 eggs. I mean, that's pretty good. You had 4 to 5 follicles responding and you got 4 eggs. That's pretty good. 3 were mature. That's awesome. 2 fertilized, thumbs up, and grew to blast. Okay, so it's like 100% of your embryos grew to blastocysts. Unfortunately, upon genetic testing, both were abnormal. I'm currently in my 2nd round of stems, and given how unresponsive I was in the last cycle, my doctor prescribed Clomid, low-dose HCG, 450 of gonal F, and it doesn't look like I'm responding either. I'm only yielding 2 growing follicles so far. Here's the deal. I'm 36 with an AMH of 1.16, and we want at least 2 children. Considering the low egg yield, we're at a loss and not sure how to proceed from here. Please help. Okay, so Ping. Here's the deal. Are you being suppressed? It's kind of like me asking, are you depressed? Are you being suppressed? Are your ovaries depressed? Is someone giving you something to make your ovaries fall asleep? What I mean by that, birth control pills. Are you on Lupron? Like, there's certain medications like estrase priming, and some people, they can be very suppressive, and it can be really hard for the ovaries to wake up. Or this is the real life story about your eggs, and your AMH is actually falsely elevated, meaning it was just a lab variation and your AMH is probably 0.2 and not 1.1. So if you're a patient of mine, I would be like, this is very frustrating. I feel your pain, literally, like I feel ridiculous amounts of pain when I go through cycles that don't work with patients. And obviously, as you can tell from my bubbly personality, I feel immense joy, and that's why I keep doing what I do every single day from morning till night, and probably even in my sleep, I probably dream about baby making and doing transfers for people. I digress, but my point is this. In a case like yours, I would repeat your FSH, estradiol, and your AMH. I would stop all suppressing medications. I think the approach that you use is just fine, that mini IVF approach. However, I personally don't like Clomid. I think Femera, just my bias, works better. But you know the answer is probably in your genes. So make sure you've done all the appropriate and necessary genetic tests that your doctor needs, your doctor thinks you need. So the genetic testing that I would do if you were a patient of mine would be chromosome analysis and Fragile X screen for you and maybe even your husband. Let's say you had 47XXX. Did you know that that's a common cause of premature ovarian failure? I hate that word, by the way. So we call it primary ovarian insufficiency. I'm not sure that makes me feel positive and bubbly either. But at the end of the day, I want you to know your diagnosis so you have a better idea as to what's going on and what you can do differently. So if you find out that, let's say you have an abnormal chromosome analysis from how you were made from the very beginning, then it might change your thought process as to what you're going to do next. So find out a little bit more information and talk to your doctor about additional supplements like NAD. See if your doctor believes in HGH and has good experience with that like I do. And see about other protocols like a mid-luteal stimulation or a duostim. You might be a good candidate for that as well. And keep trying and keep asking questions. And you're doing all the right things. This next question is from Kendall. Kendall is saying this. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 26. My AMH is 1.68. I've had 2 failed IVF rounds this year. My first round was in July, and they had me on Ganirelix, Gonal-F, 225 Menopur for 14 days, which resulted in 7 mature eggs, but only 1 fertilized. Unfortunately, it stopped developing on day 5. The second round just finished in November, and they did microdose Lupron, up to 300 of Gonal, and ended up with 225 of Menopur for a total of 10 days, which resulted in only 3 mature eggs and 0 fertilized. I've been doing acupuncture 2 times a week since August, and I'm taking CoQ10, DHEA, vitamin D, and prenatal daily. I feel like my meds are too high. Would a lower dose protocol be something to consider? What else can I be doing? Kendall, first of all, I would say, if you are a patient of mine, I always have to qualify that because this show isn't to replace the advice of your personal physician. I'm just kind of like hanging out with you guys and talking shop and like talking fertility shop, and that's just what I do. So I would say, let's not take the DHEA. I don't get too excited about that. And let's talk through what else can we do to make your eggs more mature, growing them bigger, giving you a bigger trigger shot, right? Adding HGH, and really breaking down what the diagnosis is. It sounds like there's an embryo quality issue. Duh. We're not getting embryos. And then breaking it down even more, there's a fertilization issue. So the question is this egg or is this sperm? It seems like it's probably mostly egg because we're not able to get mature eggs. And then on top of that, we're not able to get them fertilized. So what if it's both things? We can't just ignore the sperm part. So I would do sperm DNA fragmentation testing, chromosome analysis on both of you, and then talk to your doctor about different protocols and see what they think about your body size, your lifestyle. Is there something with your body size that maybe, sometimes women who are on the thinner side might have a harder time making mature eggs? I don't know. So explore all of these avenues with your fertility doctor and see what they think. There are variants that we can inherit from mom and dad, but we can't ask dad, like, how many kids did you have? Because obviously that's just not a thing yet. Maybe one day. I actually have a theory, you guys, that men will be having uterine transplants probably in like 50 to 100 years from now. I think it's going to be a thing, but right now society doesn't need men to carry babies. Thank God. Can you imagine? They can't even get through a cold. I'm just seeing if my husband's watching because then I'll just haze him. But back to the serious situation that you're in, Kendall, those are the kinds of things that I would think about for you. And I would also say, I don't find in cases where I have a low mature egg count that using medications like Lupron is helpful. I prefer no Lupron. It sounds like you weren't on any birth control pills, no suppression, growing your eggs nice and juicy, like juicy, 20 to 24, really nice dose of the trigger shot. All of those things can potentially help. So I hope my tips and tricks are going to help you. Okay, this last question before I get to your live chatted questions is from Laura. Laura says, "Hi, Dr. Aimee. I am 28 years old and my partner is 37. We've been trying since 2019 in December, so a year now. I got off birth control pill in November 2019, and I started it 2 years prior. Prior to birth control pills, my cycles were really off. We got pregnant in May of 2020 only to have a biochemical pregnancy, but I knew something was wrong when I had a burning sensation throughout my body. I continued to try for months and wondered why my periods were so off, so I got a test and found out that I have PCOS in September. Wondering if I'm able to take this combo of medications, vitamin D, inositol, NAC, prenatals. Is it possible for cycles to regulate with that and for me to conceive naturally? I'm really paranoid about having another miscarriage. I also stopped tracking using OPKs because it didn't work for me. Do you have any suggestions? My doctor also wanted me to lose significant amount of weight. I've been doing lazy keto and I'm cutting out really bad foods." Okay, Laura, same advice as the last questioner who asked me about PCOS. Go to my website, dreamy.org, put in PCOS and you'll see all the articles. You can also go to my YouTube channel, Egg Whisperers Show, and also do the same thing with the term PCOS, and you'll see all my PCOS shows. We talk about CBD. We talk about, and no CBD for people who are trying to conceive, but CBD, plant-based diet, intermittent fasting, all the supplements, and you're all on all the great supplements, but I would also try and heal your PCOS, HEAL. I learned that term for doctor. She's a PhD in OB-GYN from Canada, Dr. Dylan Cutler, about healing your PCOS, checking your levels, and balancing them. And so what I mean by that is, what is your hemoglobin A1C? What is your testosterone level? And let's try and fix them all. And it doesn't have to be fixing them all through exercise. It could be fixing them all through a healthier lifestyle. And a healthier lifestyle could mean just lifting weights, walking more. It doesn't necessarily have to be the focus on losing weight. But I think focusing on a healthier lifestyle is really key to helping you get pregnant and having regular cycles. And, the data shows that, sure, losing weight can help, but you can also have a really hard time losing weight if you haven't healed the PCOS and know what you're treating. So medications, for example, like metformin could help. If your testosterone is really high, sometimes they even have patients take a break, go back on birth control pills, take spironolactone and metformin to bring those levels down. Doing yoga, believe it or not, can help. Acupuncture could also help. There's so many cool ways of treating and healing PCOS. There's so many great online resources. So I hope you'll go to my blog and find some of these resources, and I hope that they will really, really help you. And I've certainly had patients with PCOS, with the experiences that you've had, who've gone on to get pregnant naturally without any drugs. But sometimes you need a little whiff, literally like a little whiff of like Femera to help you. And the other thing I would do is don't ignore the miscarriage. The miscarriage happened for a reason, and I would go to angelmethod.com and go through that and see if any of those things are needed for you. Rule out a septum. Make sure actually that your fallopian tubes are open. What if that biochemical pregnancy was actually a sign of a blocked tube? You might want to know that sooner or later. So talk to a fertility doctor and go through all these things that I'm mentioning to you, and hopefully some of my suggestions will help. And at the end of the day, take CoQ10. Okay. Guys, I've gone through all the email questions for today. I'm going to start answering your live chatted question, and I'm going to start from the top, and here we go. So the first question that we have here is, I heard that there is a shortage for 1.5 inch PIO needles because of the COVID vaccine. Can we use something else? And I have not heard that. I probably have 100,000 1.5 inch needles here in my office. So I haven't heard of any such shortage. And at the end of the day, if there is a shortage, you can also use a 1 inch, and you can use a 22 gauge, you can use a 25 gauge, you can even use an 18 gauge. Ouchie, but it's possible. Next question is, dear doctor, my fertility specialist told me that I had bad eggs after 4 miscarriages, 1 failed IVF, where to his surprise, I had 13 follicles, 3 eggs, and 1 embryo that was implanted at day 3. I am 40 years old. Okay. So the next question is how to improve egg quality. So egg quality is the word age, right? Age, like A for age, genetics, and environment. So we can't control our age. We can do things to maybe improve our genetics by, like, if you, let's say, are genetically predisposed to certain things and, like, you know, live a healthier lifestyle and ease your environment. So that's all about supplements, sleeping well, drinking water, reducing stress, mindfulness and meditation. All those kinds of things are things that can improve egg quality. Someone's asking, hi, Dr. Aimee, are NAD and NAC recommended for stimulation in an IVF cycle? Andrea, great question. If you were a patient of mine, I would say yes, I would like you to take your supplements until we're done banking embryos. That's my approach. Talk to your doctor. A lot of doctors don't feel comfortable with that, so I certainly cannot say or recommend things that your doctor doesn't recommend for you. Next question is from Emma. My doctor ran an implantation failure panel 2 weeks until 2 weeks, let's see here. And something came back abnormal, and he's putting me on prednisone. Am I less likely to be able to get pregnant? Thank you. So Emma, I would say that I'm not sure exactly what they tested. Prednisone or something similar to it is something that I routinely use for most of my patients who can tolerate it. They take it for 4 days before their transfer. So I'm not particularly worried by what you're sharing with me, but talk to your doctor more about what they've tested you for, what the diagnosis is, what the prognosis is, and why the treatment. Really easy things to ask. Diagnosis, prognosis, and why the treatment. Next question is from IVF Be Optimistic. I love that. I'm 39, low AMH. I did 4 rounds of IVF, low number of eggs. They stopped growing at the 3-cell stage. 4 cycles, no embryos. Should I keep going, or is it the end of my journey? That's really hard. I mean, I think that's a really personal question to ask. I can't answer that for you, but you guys know the questions that I ask my patients to help them through this. Number 1, if you moved on and used an egg donor, would you look back and say, I wish I had tried one more time? The writing's on the wall, meaning like the likelihood of being successful is so low if you're not getting mature eggs, if they're not fertilizing, if they're just not growing. So we know that the eggs aren't viable enough anymore, and it might not make sense to keep going. But if you feel like you want to try one more time and then move on, I would do it. If you're really depressed, having anxiety, and really triggered by lots of things because of the experience you've had, please stop. I want you to be a parent. No more being a patient. You've been through enough. Next question is from Emma. Let's see here. Have you ever heard of people getting inflamed breasts from IVF? I'm pre-transfer and I have a ton of bright red stretch marks and veins on my breast. TMI, but is it normal? And I would say, yes, that's a side effect of the progesterone. The estrogen. And a lot of people describe breast symptoms to me. Next question is from Mel. Our PGS test showed 1 abnormal and 1 mosaic. The mosaic is trisomy 4 and monosomy 19, the whole chromosome, not just a segment. I'm worried that this isn't going to work. Would you transfer it? So the answer is for a trisomy 4 and monosomy 19, the likelihood of a pregnancy that grows past 9 weeks of pregnancy and is abnormal is super, 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 super low. So in a case like yours, I would ask you the following question. Is it possible for us to do another cycle? And I would prefer to do that over transferring an abnormal embryo. A mosaic embryo still has maybe a 40% chance of turning into a live birth. And I would also look at the quality and talk you through all the scenarios. Scenario number 1, are you prepared to do a transfer and have it not work, knowing that you might have wasted your time? Okay. My patients who transfer a mosaic embryo say, I would rather transfer it and know than and feel like I did not waste my time. Scenario number 2, what if you transferred it and it turned into a clinical pregnancy that grew to 12, 13 weeks and then stopped growing? With the genetic abnormalities that you shared with me, the likelihood of that happening is probably 1% or less. But if that did happen, would you feel like, wow, I just put myself in a really tough decision and emotionally I won't be able to recover from this and it's going to really be hard for me to move on? So if you're one of those people that just can't live through something that's so, tragic, and of course, subconsciously, when we say as people, I want to have a family, I want to be pregnant, what we're also needing to realize is we're also saying, I realize that things can happen that are out of our control completely. And I think most people know that, but when you're transferring a mosaic embryo, you have to say that out loud, that you are making a decision to potentially transfer an embryo that might lead to a miscarriage. Are you okay with that? And if the answer is yes, I fully accept everything that could happen, then I would say, go into it, be excited about it, and just have realistic, pragmatic, and practical expectations about what the outcome could be. Next question is from George. I got an abnormal result on the Receptiva test. And doing the Lupron treatment, I asked my doctor about taking Femara with it, and she wasn't really open to it. Will it affect my chance of success? So George, the answer is, I get it. So you want to see if adding Femara would increase your chance of success or not with the Lupron. And I would say in my patients, I used to do, believe it or not, like 2 or even 3 months of Lupron. Can you imagine being on it for that long? And it sounds like you're on it. So imagine being on it for 3 months. So the beautiful thing about adding the Femara, I've cut down my Lupron to just 1 or maybe 2 months, because I feel like if I add the Femara, it's like a double whammy. It's like wham, shot, bam, pill, no more endometriosis. So I feel like it can work really, really well. So grab some studies from PubMed, show them to your doctor, have your doctor talk to other doctors like me about their experiences with adding Femara and see what your doctor thinks, and then add it. And it might decrease the amount of time that you need to be on Lupron. Next question is how to improve egg quality. Should I meet a naturopath? I love naturopaths. We have great naturopaths in our area. So talk to your doctor about the naturopath that specializes in fertility and talk to them. They do some really cool testing that naturopaths are, some of them are more traditional than others. And some of them practice both Eastern and Western medicine and do even acupuncture and all sorts of cool stuff. But they have some tools in their toolbox that doctors like me don't have. And sometimes they do cool tests. And I'm like, cool. Like I would have never have thought in a million years to test that or even think about that. So I'm so glad my patients see naturopaths sometimes. Next question is, when would you consider growth hormones in an IVF protocol? And the answer is, if a patient has an elevated FSH, if I'm considering or thinking that there might be an egg quality issue, if they've gone through IVF that didn't work, if their age is over 40, those are all the things that I consider when I'm going to add HGH. Next question is, can you please give me your thoughts on the DQ alpha test, please? And Carrie, I would say it's not a frontline test that I do for my patients, but I do think it's a test that has a role for patients who have recurrent implantation issues. So not a number 1 test on my list and the Tushy method, as you guys know, but it is something that I think can help in certain situations. Next question is, would you change an FET protocol if you get pregnant every time but lose it before 6 weeks? Do another FET or fresh? Everything else checked. Lost 3 pregnancies, have 3 tested embryos remaining. Do another retrieval. So my answer is look at the quality of your embryos and see if that's somehow related to what's going on. Look at the sperm DNA fragmentation. Consider the possibility that this could be related to endometriosis or adenomyosis, even silent endometriosis, even if you can't see it in your eyes or you don't have symptoms. So talk to your doctor about that and maybe trying the Lupron Femara protocol that I've talked about before. Fitness Barbie, I love that name. I've had high prolactin levels and low FSH. My doctor told me my only hope is an egg donor. I'm 41 years old. So, at 41, I think doctors can actually say that and be right most of the time. That like, hey, your hormone levels are such that like you need an egg donor. But the thing is this, like, would we ever tell a man who has only 1 sperm that he has to use a sperm donor? Like, no, we say like, hey dude, like if you want a chance, like we'll give you a chance and I'll just try and get that one sperm and see if it's going to work. So guess what? I don't like that fertility gender gap. And I like to tell patients, I'm going to do everything possible. If you want a chance, even if there's one egg at 41, I'm going to give you that chance. As long as we understand what the chances are. And if you understand what the chances are, let's go for it. And it's always going to be worth it for me if it's worth it for you. But if you feel like it's not worth it for a 5% chance or a 3% chance or a 10% chance, then sure, using an egg donor makes a lot of sense. This next question. I just finished my first round of IVF. I had 2 eggs fertilized, but did not become blast by day 6. What can I do to ensure better results for my next cycle? So that's the hardest thing. I wish there was something that we could do, right? Like, what can we do? Well, we can. My mnemonic, age, right? The A and the G, your age and genetics, we cannot control. The E, we can control. That's the environment. Make sure that you're the healthiest version, not virgin, but maybe you can be a virgin. The healthiest version, maybe if I spoke French, I could enunciate better. Probably not. But that's what I would do. Next question. After the ERA, should you have to wait a cycle or can you do FET right after that? You can do the FET anytime you want after the ERA. Is there anything you can do in your 2-week wait? What the heck is going on today, you guys? Is there anything you can do in your 2-week wait to best support implantation? And I would say yes. Meditate, sleep well, eat really healthy foods, have your cabana boy or girl or whatever, your preference is to bring you peeled grapes and say to them, I cannot lift a finger. And Dr. Aimee said, I need to be spoon-fed, and just open your mouth and have your beautifully peeled grapes just dropped into your mouth. Honestly, I don't know that any of that works, but I want you to have a really positive, wonderful experience after your transfer. And whatever you can do to just feel joy and find joy and laugh and just be happy, right? Super cheese ball alert right here. And knowing that not every transfer is going to work, and know that if it doesn't work, there's going to be a plan, right? There's a plan. You do your post-IVF consult with your doctor right away and make that plan. And until then, it's okay to feel really hopeful. And I have patients that say to me, like when I give them the bad news, not bad nose, not bad news. When I give them the bad news and they say to me, I wish I wasn't that hopeful. I wish that I, wasn't as excited because now I'm so upset. And I say to them, no, you know what? Life is too damn short. Like you can't do that to yourself, because I'm going to tell you that until you're as excited to transfer again, it's going to be really hard to rally around another transfer. So we're not going to go into the next transfer being all like, oh, I'm really upset. We're going to go into the next transfer feeling like, hot damn, I am so excited to get this embryo home. I've done everything I possibly can, and bring it, Aimee, bring it. Yeah, my patients do talk like that as well to me. It's contagious. Okay, next question is from Vienna. Dr. Aimee, what do you think of the flu shot? I've had my second cycle in February. Should I get a flu shot? I'm scared it'll affect my embryos and maybe autism and the COVID vaccine. Got it. So you're doing a cycle in February and you're asking, should I do the flu shot? Should I do the COVID shot? And the answer is do it all. All the vaccines you can do. I'm not worried about the flu shot or COVID going into a transfer. Obviously, we don't know everything there is to know about the COVID vaccine because it's so early. But I think that with all the data that's out right now, it seems like the vaccine and pregnancy, it could be safe. And for women who are trying to get pregnant, having the vaccine before pregnancy sounds like it could be safe as well. Looking at all the data we have from all the other vaccines that we have out, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well. Next question, for someone with DOR doing multiple retrievals, would you recommend back-to-back months or taking time off between cycles? That is a great question. So it really depends on your age and how many follicles you have. So I have a lot of patients that I'm like, do your cycle and then show up right when your period starts. Or I'm like, do your cycle and show up in a week and let's see if we can stimulate more eggs depending on what the situation is. And that's called duo stimulation. So again, show up, look at your ovaries. If they're swollen, go home, rest and relax and take a break. If they're not swollen, if your follicle count is just as good as more, then you'll be like, holy smokes, like that's pretty awesome that I showed up and this is like great timing for me to do another cycle. I've actually had situations where like I did back-to-back cycles and that second cycle was a better cycle. And I'm like, like if I had told her to stay home, like I would have never had this amazing cycle. So that's kind of what I think and how I think about things. Someone is saying from Minnesota, does Clomid work better versus Femara if you're over 35? And the answer is, I think Femara works better than Clomid for everybody because you don't go crazy. Femara, however, can make some people feel a little cuckoo, but Clomid does way more. So it just also depends on how you dose the Femera. So dosing it right is really important. So I had patients that be like, I have patients that have been like, Femera didn't work for me. And I'm like, so what dose did you take? They're like 1 tablet a day. I'm like, well, that's like taking nothing depending on your egg count. So you want a healthy enough dose so that you have a chance to ovulate 2 eggs if that's what your diagnosis needs. And what I mean by that is diagnosis before treatment, and make sure that your approach is addressing the diagnosis. So for example, if the sperm count is really, really low, well, I actually want my patient to ovulate 2 or 3 eggs to give the sperm the best chance to fertilize at least 1. If the age is, let's say, over 40, I want my patients, believe it or not, to ovulate even 4 eggs to give them the best chance of having 1 pregnancy from IUI. So dosing the Femera or Clomid is really important. Someone's asking about HGH and dosing. So I recommend Omnitrope, and patients take about 1/4 of the vial every couple of days during their IVF cycle. So someone's saying, do I recommend baby oil as lube? And the answer is no, it's not good for sperm. It kills them. Vivid is saying, how do you prep for transfer if someone did not test for beta-3 integrins or is lacking? So I don't believe in the beta-3 integrin test. I actually think that the ERA test is a better timing test for my patients than the beta-3 integrin test. Next question is from Chiquita Kikita. That's a cool name. I surge early, day 10 or 11. I'm 40. I surge through medications to prevent ovulation. So we try the Lupron flare. I don't generate many eggs, even on gonal F from day 3. Anything else I can do? Yes. Consider a mid-luteal phase stimulation. Consider taking even an antagonist even before you start your stimulation and see if that can help. Next question. Let's see here. I failed frozen embryo transfer, 2 PGTA embryos left. My AMH is 0.4. If we want 2 kids, should we do another stim before doing 2 months of Depo Lupron? My answer is yes. Katya is saying, hi, Dr. Aimee, I'm 35 and my AMH is 2.78. My AFC is 12. I just had my egg retrieval and had 21 eggs retrieved with 18 being mature and frozen. How do I decide whether to do another cycle or not? Easy. Easy, easy, easy. All right. How many kids do you want? Is there a chance that you're going to want kids like way beyond when you'll still potentially have normal eggs? Would you ever consider having a pregnancy on your own as a solo mama by choice in the next 3 to 5 years? If the answer is yes, I just totally forgot all the questions that I just asked, to any of the questions that I just brought up, then yes, do another cycle. If the answer is no, again, I just totally forgot all the questions that I just asked, don't do another cycle. No, I'm just kidding. So in general, I have an egg calculator that I give my patients. I'm just going to say if you had 18 eggs mature at 35, your chance of having 1 baby with frozen eggs is 90%. Your chance of having 2 babies with frozen eggs is about 65%. And your chance of having 3 is about 30% for a 35-year-old who's 18 mature eggs frozen. So the likelihood of you needing another cycle is pretty darn low. But I would say in a case like yours, and this is just something that I tell people to protect themselves from like hard lessons, because I've been here before with other patients, is that if you're going to delay childbearing to, let's say, 42 or 43, and who the heck uses the word childbearing anymore? That's like a really annoying word that I just used. That just sounds weird. If you're going to wait until you're 42 or 43, then I think it does make sense to either create some embryos now to kind of see what your eggs will become or do another cycle before you run out of healthy eggs. That's just kind of something I tell patients to protect themselves from some of the lessons I've learned from freezing eggs from patients who froze them and then decided to use them at an age where they didn't have healthy eggs left. Because believe it or not, happens to all of us, every single one, even J-Lo, even though she looks like has 25-year-old eggs. Okay, this question's from Ollie. Is acupuncture worth trying to improve sperm count and quality? My answer is yes. So if your partner is like stressed, or if you are the partner, stressed, not sleeping well, having a lot of anxiety and depression, then yeah, acupuncture could potentially help. Next question, I'm starting my IVF cycle today. I had the first ultrasound. I have 7 follicles. Is that enough? And the answer is absolutely, it could totally be enough. Andrew is saying, is there evidence that HGH improves the success rate of IVF? Totally. Go to PubMed, put in HGH and IVF, and you're going to read some of the studies that are out there. Next question is, how long on average does it take to get back genetic carrier test results? It takes about 3 weeks. Next question is, when I go in for a baseline, I almost always have a dominant follicle that's much larger than the rest. What would you suggest protocol-wise to get a more even count? So great question. I would bring you in sooner, and I would even start the antagonist sooner. and then maybe even give you a little whiff of an antagonist, like maybe half a shot of a ganirelix before you even start stim. And you might be someone who would benefit just for a little bit of estrase priming, or maybe a couple birth control pills to suppress your ovaries just enough so that you don't do that. And then start your IVF meds even sooner. So maybe start on cycle day number 1 or 2. Next question is, what is the treatment for DOR? Periods are intermittent, growing 0 to 1 follicles. So the treatment is not necessarily a treatment, unfortunately. So when we run out of healthy eggs, we have to use donor eggs. That's what donor egg banks are for. That's what donor egg agencies are for. So you can only work, I can only work with the DNA that a patient gives me. I can't change anything. I can't grow more eggs than a patient has. I know there's lots of treatments out there that people can read online, but I'm not really convinced that they necessarily work quite yet. And I hope one day I'll be like, come in for your ovary Botox. Come on in. I'm going to inject it into your ovaries, or like inject something into your ovaries that will grow more eggs. Like that would be pretty awesome. But until then, we have to settle for something that's still amazing and awesome. And that's the gift that other people can give us. And that's egg donation. Next question is low AMH indicative of poor egg quality? 0.4 AMH, my FET with 2 embryos is scheduled for 12-14. So this is the thing. If you already have embryos and your embryos are fabulous, then I don't think you have to worry one bit. But yes, if your AMH especially is under 0.6, it's kind of how we put people in 2 categories: lower egg quality, higher egg quality. So if it's less than 0.6, there's a higher chance that your embryos might be genetically not viable, but it doesn't mean that they are not viable. Okay? So don't think badly right now. Get rid of those ants, those always negative thoughts, stomp them out, and be sure to just think really positive and talk to your doctor about all the things that you ruled out before your transfer, so you don't look back and be like, why didn't I ask them these questions? Like, why didn't I know this? Talk to them about your embryo quality, go through all the things on my embryodiamonds.com list, and make sure you know all those answers. So next question is an arcuate uterus with 6 miscarriages? I have an arcuate uterus with 6 miscarriages. How likely would the correction surgery result in successful pregnancy? So SF Giants Chic, as far as arcuate uterus, we usually think of something to repair as like a septum. An arcuate uterus is actually just a variation of normal, and it's not something that we necessarily resect. But I do think it makes sense in a case like yours to do a hysteroscopy and see if maybe it's a septum and remove it. And after removal, I've seen great success stories. Ren is asking, is it okay to do Botox? Are there certain times when you definitely do not do it? Botox is totally fine. Does Botox affect a pregnancy? No. However, it's really frowned upon to stab a needle into a woman's face when she's pregnant, because we just don't like to cause pregnant women pain. It's just frowned upon. But the reality is you could probably do Botox in pregnancy. Not could, you can. And is anyone going to really do it on a pregnant woman? No. Next question from Maria. I don't have any implantation issues that I'm aware of, but want to do an ERA before transfer. Is that recommended even if I've had no failure? So that's the thing. Yeah, I don't think the ERA is something that you do if transfers have failed. I think the ERA is something that you do so that you don't have a failed transfer. See how I flip it around? I offer it to my patients, and if they have, let's say, way more embryos and way more, just kind of depends on their family size goals and the family size that they want, then I'm like, why do it? But if the transfer doesn't work, would you wish you had? And the answer is, yeah, I really just want to do everything. Then we do it first. Next question is, let's see here. What is the thinnest your lining can be for a successful pregnancy? So for me, I like to get the lining over 8 millimeters. I definitely have had successful pregnancies in people with less than 8, but that's just my personal protocol. And as far as Vivid's question, do you have special supplements you suggest to prepare for transfer? The answer is yes. I recommend a prenatal vitamin with vitamin D if the patient's vitamin D is low, and fish oil. And sometimes I even have my patients continue their CoQ10. Caitlin is asking, I had 1 failed FET with only available embryo that made it to day 5. My doc is promoting an egg retrieval and fresh transfer if I get another embryo. I'm 32 with poor egg retrieval numbers, low AMH. Thoughts on fresh over fat? So I should do my jingle. Fresh is just as good as a frozen. Frozen is just as good as a fresh, unless your doctor thinks that fresh or frozen is better for you. So honestly, I don't really think that there's a big deal between either one. Frozen gives you the opportunity to bank embryos. It gives you the opportunity to do genetic testing. It gives you the opportunity to do implantation testing. Fresh gets you to a pregnancy faster. And if an embryo is lower quality, sometimes it could be better than freezing it and putting it through a biopsy in a freeze. So that's kind of how I would think of a case like yours. Last 2 questions, guys, and then I'm going to close this for tonight, and then I'll see you guys probably tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining today. Here's the question from Andrea. I've had 7 biochemical pregnancy losses. My doctor thinks it's autoimmune. What would you recommend? So Andrea, I don't know. Yeah, it could be autoimmune, but it could also be anatomic. So take a close look at your cavity. Look at your fallopian tubes. Make sure these aren't recurrent miscarriages, look for endometriosis and adenomyosis. And certainly I have seen cases where it could be autoimmune as well. And a surrogate in a case like that has been very helpful for me and my patients who've had that situation. The ERA does test for endometritis only if you do the test for endometriosis. So I also, at the same time as the biopsy for the ERA, send cells to another company called Receptiva DX, and they look at endometriosis. Let's see here. I have 37 eggs, half mature and half intermediate. Can I have success with the intermediate ones? And the answer is unlikely. The likelihood of an intermediate, I think what you're saying is an M1 turning into a healthy embryo, is pretty low, but it's not zero. The fertilization rate of an M1 is around 10 to 40%, and then the likelihood of it being a genetically normal embryo is just a little bit lower. Okay, so last question here. Actually, last two. I promise I'll stop. I promise. Angie's saying, what are the chances of a D-grade embryo to implant? Bad quality, fresh transfer 3 days. So I would say ask your doctor. Your doctor will know. In my clinic, I wouldn't transfer an embryo like that unless the patient really wanted the experience of having an embryo transfer. But I don't want to put anyone through a 2-week wait unnecessarily. So it sounds like that embryo probably isn't viable. Last question. This is a great one. What's the best way to ask your physician about an ERA before an FET? That's easy. You just say to the doctor, I would like to do an ERA before my FET. That's how simple it is. And if your doctor says no, then you would say, well, what would you do if this transfer didn't work? Would you do an ERA before my next FET? And then you can say, well, you know what? I still just want to do an ERA before my FET. And if your doctor still says no, and you feel in your uterus that you really want to do one, then maybe go to another doctor who will run you through an ERA cycle, and then go back to your doctor and be like, love you, man. I just did my ERA. I feel so much better. I got it out of my system, and now I feel very well prepared for my transfer. Okay, guys, for those of you who are still watching, God bless you. I hope my sparkle method, I hope I can just, by some point, it's just going to be like this. And it's not going to be so painful where people are like, I feel sorry for her and I'm embarrassed for her. So thank you guys for joining tonight. I hope you guys have an amazing night. I want you guys to be vigilantly, I can't even talk today. What the heckity heck? And this is only coffee. Vigilantly optimistic. I hear things about people poo-pooing being, what's that word? Like being really happy people and like being super optimistic. And there's a difference between like being annoying and not like having compassion and empathy for people's experiences, and being vigilantly optimistic and always seeing the light and looking forward to things every day in life. So that's me. And I hope that a little bit of this something rubs off on you, and that you can carry this spirit that I have into your next fertility appointment. And I hope that the questions that I'm bringing up here on the show are truly going to help you be a more informed and empowered patient. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for saying thank you. You guys are so welcome. God bless each and every one of you. And I hope you guys have a great night. And I'll see you guys here tomorrow night. Okay? I'll see you later. Bye.